Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My guest today is Jose from Yanez Subnet 54. Hello, Jose. How you doing?
Hey, Mark. How's it going? Good to see you again.
Welcome back to the show. You're not like a regular. You're like a regular guest.
Always a pleasure to be here and talking to you, Bittensor.
Yeah, same here. Same here. And
Yes,
I kind of
yes.
see you all over the world, right? Like I just saw you in San Francisco not long ago. And were you in Spain? I think you were, right?
We saw
it
it in Spain as well. Yeah.
Sorry, it's just they all start to run
we're
together.
We're going to see each other in France. In a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yep. Proof of Talk in France. All the full cast of Bittensor will be there once again. The musical.
That's right.
So Jose, I wanted to invite you back on this show because I recently saw you on Jason Calacanis' This Week in Startups. And I felt that, although the show went relatively well, I didn't feel that Jason did a great job of capturing the full grand and glorious vision of what you're doing. I just felt like it didn't come across in the way that, I have come to know it. And I usually love what Jason does, 99% of the time. This 1% of the time, I didn't feel like he got it, right? So that is why I wanted to have you on this show so that we could spend a little bit of time and actually go through what you're doing and get that grand and glorious vision out there. Make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and I appreciate that. I think every podcast is a little bit different. Every interview is always a little bit different, and I think we learn how to think on our feet because we know that things may not go exactly how you were planning, and to be fair, conversations usually take a direction sometimes that you're not expecting or prepared for. But I appreciate it because I think it's going to give us a more structured way of explaining, what we're doing right now and where we're headed and why. So we are absolutely excited about what we're building here at Yanez.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Let's just wipe the slate clean. And I've talked to you in the past, so I know what you were doing in the past. What are you doing now? What is Yanez up to today?
Sure. So we have, and it is an evolution. It's a sequence, right? But right now we're focused on building that evolution of our message into what we call the proof of humanhood and proof of uniqueness. And in that type of solution, basically what we are enhancing is the capabilities of all these organizations to really prevent, detect fraud, detect fraudulent users, abuse of the ecosystems, and so on. Which, in a way, as I said before, is being what we've been working on preparing us to get here. And I have said this in other forums before, that when we started out, we started building this way of how to test financial prevention systems, financial crime prevention systems, in detecting their vulnerabilities to identity fraud. And we became really, really good at creating this deep fake identities, and because those are the basis to test the current stance of these financial crime prevention systems. We became so good at it that, while doing this, we understood that, okay, the next part is then how you really change the way that these systems are looking at how to prevent fraud. And it became very clear that with the explosion of deepfakes, the explosion of LLMs and so on, also came the explosion of fraud associated to these things. Mm-hmm. And what you need now is a different way of looking at how do I prevent this thing. If you think about that, identities has been for the last 10, 15 years the way to prevent fraud. And now you can come up with fake identities so easily. It just means that paradigm doesn't actually work anymore. So you have to change the paradigm. You have to change and say, I can no longer afford to prevent fraud based on this. I need to change. So this is where we are. This was the huge aha moment, right? Or that, as an entrepreneur, and I know that you talk to so many of us on a daily basis, right? That when these moments happen, and they happen they are, like mind-changing things, right? And this is exactly what happened to us. What was to that realization that you just walked into something that fundamentally is changing the way that the security ecosystem is going to work. And that new ecosystem needs something different. And that's where this proof of humanhood and uniqueness is going to be absolutely the primitives that are needed to move forward and to be able to get ecosystems that are integral, that where people can participate safely without having to, disclose who they are all the time and so on. So that's the key. That was the big change, and that's why we are so focused right now in building the solution. That doesn't mean, our existing products, we're still selling those products. We still have, as I mentioned also many times before, we have multi-billion-dollar clients signing up for those products. Mm-hmm. Those products are doing great. This is the new part where we are in that evolution is what we're seeing, that the next layer of commerce, the next layer of agents, interfaces, and everything is going to need these new primitives for humanhood, uniqueness, delegation of agents, and so on.
Okay, so let me try to repeat back to you what I think I heard, right? Because I think I get it. So so what you were doing, and you're still doing it, but sort of the older vision, the legacy vision, if you will, was, there's all these companies that need KYC. Basically people presenting proof of identity, usually with an ID or a passport or whatever. And your subnet was basically the red team. It was the,
yes.
People pretending to be bad people, creating fake IDs, like trying to fake out the system, right? Like, can I sneak through, right? And whoever creates the best fake IDs wins, right? Because they're the best bad guys in your system. And that's really great for helping you harden the product that you then turn around and sell to these entities that need KYC, like banks or crypto exchanges or, anything that needs KYC online, right? But in the middle of doing that, you had sort of like you had like a vision of enlightenment underneath the Bodhi tree, right? Or when Doc Brown hits his head in the toilet and goes, "I had a picture of my head of this," and he has the flux capacitor, right? You had that moment, and you basically said, "Wait a minute, we're doing this backwards. Like instead of like this fake ID stuff, what we should be doing is having the humans prove that they are human, like this proof of humanness thing, right? So you're like, we should just attack this problem of fraud from a completely different angle. And that angle is incredibly more powerful. And this is where the whole industry is probably headed in your brain. Have I got that correct?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. I think that the switch and the way that things are changing, right? When you think about, the expectation is that more than half the traffic in the internet is going to be either bots or agents by next year, not in 10 years, by next year, right? That explosion is just going to just become more and more and more and more. And then we have to figure out how in the world we deal with all of this commerce, all of these transactions, all of these interactions, all this participation that is going to be either delegated, and then how you distinguish when you actually need to prove that there is a human behind this, that there's not a million of bots that are launched and by 10 other agents and then just attacking a system or just overwhelming a system to make it behave in the way that you want, but that is not actually the participation that you are expecting from, right? And I think that shift, along with how easy is to subvert all of this current technologies for detection and for protection, those two things combined, is where you land and you say, damn, I need something different. I need something new, right?
Yeah. I didn't really think about it, but it's not that this is a better way. It is also that it's a better way to attack this problem of fraud, but also the adversarial nature of, living in a world where there are compounding agents upon agents upon agents, sort of multiplying like Agent
swarms.
Smiths in the Matrix. Yeah, agent swarms.
Exactly.
Basically Agent Smiths like everywhere and getting worse by the second, right? So you have that, you have that world, and all of them are conniving and innovative. And then you have things like Mythos, which are, we haven't used it yet, but rumor has it that thing is pretty good at cracking through anything, right? So you have this world in which the adversaries are becoming exponentially smarter and vaster. So,
and this is where Bittensor fits. I mean, so this is the beauty of what we have actually been able to achieve in Bittensor, right? So Bittensor is our red team. So Bittensor is the guy that is saying, I'm trying to fake an identity every day, at every time, every moment. So give me new models. I'm going to try to break them. This is a cycle, right? Because as the technology gets better to fake identities, to fake signals, and so on, we need technology to keep up with that. And that's what we built in Bittensor. And as I also mentioned before, it's not that it's fully realized yet, but that is the path. That is what we're achieving with Bittensor, is to get all these miners that are incentivized to break our system. And the more they break it, the better, because the faster our system, it will become better. And when I say our system, we are not the only ones building these pieces, right? So we are partnering with other deepfake detection technology, with biometric technologies for face, for fingerprints, for voice, so it is a compendium. But what Bittensor is allowing us to do is to constantly attack the system. So we continue to train our miners and direct them in ways to attack our system. And the more we direct them, the more novel their attacks become. And we are incentivize them to even attack them in ways that we are not telling them to do, but they come with their own ways to do it. And that's the essence of it. And that's what allows us to become better and better and better and better, that we can rely on this technology, these models, to keep up with whatever the fraudsters are doing. So that's the cycle, right?
What is your incentive mechanism? Is it a winner take all kind of thing, or does everybody get kind of a slice of the pie? Like, how does that work?
So it's a very interesting combination of many of these things. So when we started and working with miners, and we started seeing that, yes, they are generating what we're asking them to do, but there was no easy way to do an overall analysis of their inputs, because most of the validators they don't have a history of what has happened before, right? So you imagine that I provide an image right now. There's nothing to prevent me from providing that same agent again and again and again in every cycle, right?
Yeah.
So what we realized was we had a lot of miners that were kind of reusing the same thing. So try to exploit us, as we all know the miners do, right?
Sure.
And try to take advantage of the system. So what we did was we say we're going to take and we're going to manually review these outputs or these inputs, depending on how you want to see it, or the outcome from the miners. And we're going to review those manually offline. And then we're going to start looking at who is really doing this in the right way, and we're going to assign them a reputation. So we have now a manual review operation that we take all the outputs and we analyze them on a cycle basis. So we go into a cycle, and then in that cycle, the miners are producing data. And then at the end of that cycle, based on how well they've done through the cycle, we assign them a reputation. There's a scoring mechanism. And those that score above certain thresholds get rewarded on the next cycle. So they're getting rewarded for the work they did in the previous cycle.
Got it.
And this goes on and on. So we change on a per cycle basis, we change the challenge. But how well they do on that challenge is we are able to then, give them the reward of that on the next cycle. So we started out burning 100% when we realized this is not quite working for us in the same way. We need to rethink how we are doing this incentive mechanism. And now we are at 65%, because now we have miners at what we call the diamond level, we have at silver level, gold level, and so on. when the first time we run this cycle thing, and I think we're back into, I think we introduced this concept probably in December timeframe, and maybe that was our first cycle. And we had about 2 or 3 miners that were doing okay. Now we have, the latest number is 37 miners that are now doing very, very well in this ranking mechanism. So every cycle is becoming more interesting. We have spent at least focus effort in the last 2 cycles to bring more miners into the network, because we need this. We need these attackers. We need this challenge, and we need them from all over the world, because the way that, that the United States thinks about identity is very different than Europe, very different than Latin America, Africa, Asia, and so on. So we need miners from all over the world to challenge our identity systems in a way that we can benefit from all over the place. And we are starting to achieve that, which is fantastic, right?
Yeah. So let me repeat that back, because I think you said something really important there. So a lot of people ask the question, why should they do a subnet? Like, why don't I just raise some venture capital money and hire a bunch of people, right? And what you just said was, well, I could do that, but it'd be, or I could do a subnet and have 256 miners, 37 of which, maybe 40-ish, which are really good at attacking me. Plus, I have the benefit of this diversity of thought. People from different parts of the earth are better at scamming. They just are, right? So they've had to in order to survive, right? In some cases. So they've gotten quite good at it. And those are the adversaries that you actually want breaking your system and showing you what's wrong. And except you've turned it on its head and you're like, look, you can make money by breaking me, right? Instead of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of bounties and things exist, over the world cybersecurity. I think Bittensor offers a structure, a framework, and a structure where it's easier to bring people into it, right? And for example, we have approached groups of people that have nothing to do with Bittensor, that don't know about Bittensor, and we are saying, hey, there is this problem that we want people to attack us. Come into Bittensor so you can do that. So we've been doing a little bit of recruiting ourselves outside just the current Bittensor community, which is great, because at the end we think ourselves as ambassadors of the protocol as well. So we think ourselves as people that are trying to build an ecosystem, bigger ecosystem. And so we have gone our ways also, because you have to bring certain specific skills to work as a miner in our network, right? So you have to bring that understanding of computer vision, of machine learning, computer vision type of resources that are not usually what you had found in the Bittensor ecosystem. So we have to also go and talk to people that we want them to attack our system and say, there's the framework where it would work. And I think that the fact that we have spent now, months building, step-by-step tools, how to become a miner and so on, is part of that, because we also want to bring other people into the ecosystem that participates in that way.
That's interesting. So you've created like a miner onboarding kit.
Yeah. In fact, we just released it. I think it was yesterday. It could be even today, where we posted a video exactly on how to become a miner and so on in our subnet. And it's an effort that we will continue to do, because again, this is a fundamental part of our strategy. So there is something here that ties in, and then I'm going to go back to sort of the overall product in a minute, but I think this is going to tie it in a very good way for us. Part of so when we started building this, we had 3 fundamental concepts in our head, in our design, and we call it 3 pillars of the design. So one is that it has to be privacy preserving. In no way, shape, or form we're going to expose users' data into this. Number 2, it has to be hardware agnostic. That means that it needs to work with the sensors that everybody has. And number three, it has to be fully decentralized because we believe that that's where the world is heading. That's what we need. Okay. So the reason we can, and I'm going to talk, and these three principles to me, they all work together. You cannot have one without the other. But let's stick with the hardware agnostic for a minute. So if you look at the competition, and everybody knows what.
And by competition, we're talking about WorldCoin, right? Because that's what this sort of sounding like, right? Okay.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that's explicitly made clear.
Yeah. And there are others. World are not the only ones, but let's take World for a minute. And the primary designing factor was this concept of the orb, and it's a sensor that allows you to measure your iris, which is the iris is one of the most secure or the most binding, if you will, part of your biometrics, right? So it's really difficult to spoof. So this sensor, right? One of the reasons it is because it carries with it a high degree of reliability on matching those biometrics to an individual, right? And that's why they build the orb thing. So if you don't want to use a specific sensor that you yourself build and control, which is the reason I don't like the orb, but that you yourself control, right? You have to build technology that allows you to use any sensor. But by using any sensor, right, then you have to build technology that is very good at detecting those sensors' outputs and ensure that they are not being played. This is where Bittensor comes in. This is the time portion.
Yeah.
So big portion that allows us to be hardware agnostic is that we have to rely on technology that allows us to ensure that we're not being attacked through the other sensors, the other many sensors that we have. So to build that technology is what we need this constant attacker thing. So we are at least somewhat assured that the technology is going to stand in the outer world because we've been attacked constantly, and that's part of the reason, right? So that's how the Bittensor world fits into that portion, and why we believe that we are building a technology that allows us then to be hardware agnostic. Now, in order to get to the level of assurance that you need in these biometric worlds, we have to use multiple types of biometrics. You cannot rely on a single biometric. So we're using face, we're going to be using fingerprints, we're going to use voice, and this is the multimodal biometric world that also allows us, which is the other part why hardware agnostic was so important to us, is that, I get that 4 billion people uses a smartphone. Understand that. And of course, once you get 4 billion people, that's enough of a mass. But at the same time, it's an exclusion part of the technology. So there are 4 other billion people that don't have a smartphone. So you still need to cater to those communities. You still need to cater to those products because you want if you really believe in decentralization, right, then we really believe in a world where everybody can participate, right?
Yeah.
And for us, it was very important that we could accept any device, any form of sensor, because we needed to cater to everyone. And some people don't have sensors. I get that. And some people have flip phones. And so we need to introduce things like behavioral biometrics and so on, so that we can have a solution to make sure that everybody can participate in a world where that is fully decentralized, right? So that's why I believe that all these concepts are feeding to each other: hardware agnostic, decentralization, privacy preserving, right?
Okay, so let me ask you a question about WorldCoin, because it's for those who don't know, by the way, because we should probably explain this a little bit. So Sam Altman, the same guy behind OpenAI, has another company called WorldCoin, and it's basically this blockchain, sort of like Bitcoin-ish thing, where you have to go to. He has a special piece of hardware that he calls the orb, and it looks like an orb, and it's got like a little eyeball hole in it. And when you sign up for WorldCoin, you put your little eyeball on the orb, and it scans I guess it's iris, not retinal scan. Retinal scans from Star Trek, so iris scan, and then and that's your biometric identity, which is then emblazoned on his blockchain. But it's sort of creepy because it's like you're giving Sam Altman your eyeball, right? Like it's very weird. Like it doesn't feel good, and you're sort of like, well, what's Sam Altman going to do with my eyeball, man? Because now Sam's got it, right? So it shouldn't be something where I have to give it to Sam. It should be decentralized. So it should be like Bitcoin, where everything's encrypted. And yeah, I gave it my eyeball, but like nobody's got it. It's just on the blockchain in an encrypted way. And that allows me to prove that I'm me without anybody else being able to get access to my eyeball. Right. And that's what you want to do. And on top of that, you don't want to be chained to any sort of specific piece of hardware like the orb. You want to have multi modes of biometric identification, from, Face ID on a smartphone to, I don't know, Voice ID on a flip phone, all kinds of things that sort of scales down. You're probably less sure that this is probably the surety goes down as you scale down the biometric detectors. But you want to have sort of a more scalable human biometric identifier baked into your system. Is that basically correct?
Yeah. So, and to be fair to World, I mean, and I have obviously I have different opinions about how to build a solution, right? Like that. They actually have evolved quite a bit, and they have reacted positively to some of the market demand. So they recently introduced a way to do a registration based on your face and using the sensor of your phone. They call it a low assurance, but their design is still very much dependent on the orb, and because they call that their high assurance. And I think I think that in my mind, when you start out with that assumption that you're gonna capture something with high quality and high robustness like the iris, that actually, in my mind, constrains what technology you can build, because you're making a big assumption at the beginning that I have something that robust, right? And I think that as they evolve and as they try to bring new technologies like they just did on the phone, I actually believe that that decision that they did initially is gonna hinder them to actually develop technology that can be robust and accept any other biometrics. And I think so that's why I think that when you start from a different principle, when you start from being hardware agnostic, then you open your mind to then develop technologies that are just don't make those assumptions anymore. And you as a consumer, as you said, I think it's creepy that you go to get your iris. I agree with you.
That's so creepy as hell.
I just think it's creepy, right? And I think when you feel more, if you have your device at home, and you feel so much in control in this thing.
Yeah.
You said something there that I think is very important to clarify as well. So the way that we've built this, and when you really lay down and say, I'm going to develop something that is privacy preserving, in our solution, biometrics will never leave your device. Doesn't matter what it is, it will never, ever leave your device. The value that your original biometrics are taking to generate what we call biokeys, and those are destroyed on your device. They don't exist on your device. One of the other key values here is that we don't produce, the equivalent of private keys. Those private keys are regenerated every time that you take your biometrics. So there's nothing to steal. You cannot steal your secret, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Because that value that defines you is generated in real time while you're doing your validation or your acquisition or whatever. And that's what allows us to compare in this decentralized registry that you are the same that you were before.
Right.
And we don't care. I mean, we don't care for our scope of application. We don't care that I am Jose Caldera. Right? There's no connection between your identity data and our credential, right? And our unique identifier, our biokeys, to the point that those biokeys are are completely computed in a cryptographic environment that it never can be replicated, right? So it's, as I said, once you constrain yourselves to a solution that is privacy preserving, you do everything in between to ensure that that data is never going to be compromised, because you're not creating it in the first place. And that's key, because if you don't create it, you cannot steal it. And that is the other part that is really key. So I think that's you mentioned, because there are other solutions that have taken the approach of basically creating the registry based on your biometrics. And that is, it's kind of a disaster waiting to happen, right? Because the last thing that you want is a database of biometrics floating around. It's just again, if you want to protect something, don't create it in the first place, right? And I think that is the safest approach to that. It has a lot of implications design-wise and technology-wise, right? It makes it more difficult to build this thing, right? In a way, right? But at the same time, it feels so much safer at the other end. You know what I mean? There's nothing to steal. And in our backends, because we're building a fully decentralized way of doing this, there's not going to be a Yanez central repository of anything, because it's all going to be in a chain, and it's going to be in a smart contract. So to me, as an owner of a company, that it is much safer when I don't have anything to protect in that way, right?
So basically, Sam Altman has created a centralized database of everybody's eyeballs, right?
Well, again, to be fair, they've now come to a protocol that allows them to separate those biometrics into what they call shards, which is a way to distribute this. However, that is still not fully decentralized, and because they have certain entities that they trust to keep these pieces in a way. But they started there, but they have moved away again.
Okay, so they franchised eyeballs. Is another way of looking at it. Okay, I'm lying a little bit, but it's like it's not as clean as what you've done, right? It's worse.
No.
So
that's right.
So what you have done is you've basically said, look, we use your biometrics, whatever it is, to generate a private key, which then generates a public key, and then we delete the private key because we don't need it. We don't need to store it anywhere. Your head can regenerate that private key at any time. So if we need you to prove that you're you, and then we regenerate it and see if it matches with the public key that we stored previously. And there's no way to sort of go backwards, just like there isn't with Bitcoin private public key pairs. So that makes sense. Right. My head is my seed phrase. Like is another way to sort of think about it, right?
So I was going to say you hit it on the head, but what I was going to say was that one of the greatest use case, not the greatest, but one great use case around this is actually wallets that are completely, you don't need to store seeds. So one of our first use cases, we have a client that is adopting this. We start integration pretty soon with them. Is actually our second client. It's actually in the wallet recoverability. They don't need recoverability. There are no seed phrases. Is your biometrics. And that is to me, is a very powerful use case when you think about wallets, right? And when you see it about the amount of money that collectively we've lost in this market on coins that we cannot recover ever because we forgot the private key, because we lost our device, because, all those things, this is a great use case of using your bio keys, your biometrics as your own keys, because then you really have, again, if you don't create something, you don't have to lose it. You know what I mean? It's like it is you, and that takes that away from it.
Okay, so I have to ask this question because everybody's head is going here right now, and nobody's saying it out loud, but I have to ask it. What happens if I die? Right? Like what? Can my nephews and nieces get at my seed phrase, which is my head, which is now dead? Like what happens?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so there is a way to have a multi-signature wallet type example where you would have, two three pieces, and two of them
heads.
could. Well, you have to store something in a place where you do it, and the other would be stored in a service that you trust, or that you ostensibly pay to store that piece, such that if you die, or if your biometrics get deformed, if you get
right.
and so there are scenarios where that can happen, obviously, and there's the only solution that we can think of is a multi-sig style storage, right, where you have multiple pieces, and you have people that you trust, or you have spaces that you trust, that you can then put it together if something were to happen.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the same as it is for any key, which totally makes sense. You do 2 out of 3. You have some recovery scheme it's also tied to it. So it's not just my head. So yeah.
Correct.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes total sense. Okay. So how does the subnet, I understand how the subnet supports your kind of red team attacking of KYC process. I don't understand yet how the subnet applies to this new use case of proof of human. How does it fit in there, or does it?
At the moment, currently, the focus is helping us attack our systems, so our systems become better and better. And that is I don't see an end to that function.
Okay.
Because I will predict that it doesn't matter what you create, it's going to be somebody trying to break it. I mean, the world is the world since the world day one, and that has been true since day one. So I think that function always stays. There is a possibility, and this is something that we are exploring at the moment, on how to use miners to help us come up with a search algorithm for uniqueness. And it is something that we are not 100% certain yet that the subnet is the best place to do this. And we had a meeting, for example, with Const a couple of months ago, when we were discussing about the use of Bittensor as our registry and the pros and cons of doing that. And he brought out several points that were key for us to make certain decisions. And likely Bittensor is probably not the best protocol to do the registry on. So we are looking at different protocols as options to do that. So depending on that decision, on those decisions, we will know whether it's better on a protocol that has a proof of stake already built into it, kind of thing, rather than using the miners to do something like that. But it's possible that we still need to come up with better algorithms and models to scan a registry looking for duplicates. And maybe that's an area where the current miners could help us as well. But at the moment, the focus is on really helping us attack the system, because, I mean, that function is so key to be able to be hardware agnostic, that it's so important to us, that I think it's going to be the focus for sure for a while.
Yeah, no, I completely, now that you say it, I completely agree with you. It's like just having people just continually attacking different angles of this new thing, even like that's a universe unto itself, and will remain a universe. And as Correct. These things get smarter, and as Mythos comes out of the lab and starts escaping, and people are going to start using that for all kinds of things. So makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about your business, because I want to go back and review that. It's been a while since we've talked about that. You are a serious person with serious experience and serious contacts within a serious industry, and you're making money right now, right? You're a real company outside of all this Bittensor tomfoolery. You've got real products and real revenue. Can you tell us a little bit about that side of your universe?
Yeah. So basically we have 3 products, Proof-of-Human Uniqueness being the third one. At some point, we kind of had divided 2, but I'm going to collapse them just to make it easier to talk about it. So the first one is the ability to use data to test financial crime prevention systems. That's where we started. And we sell that product for sanctions, we sell it for PEPs, and we sell it for identity verification. So in the X, you're going to see that we have this clients on data biometrics. In essence, we were building that data to test identity verification systems, which is what we've done. So they kind of fall within our world.
So you make like an SAT where you know the wrong answers and the right answers. It's just data, and you hand it to somebody else who does all the KYC. And it's like basically take our test and we'll tell you what your score is, what your SAT score is for,
exactly.
Preventing KYC foolery. I guess foolery.
Yeah.
Foolery is the word, but that's what I mean.
Well, but in essence, is that's a concept, right?
Yep.
And
okay.
And what is interesting is, and I think this is something that we did not envision originally, but I would say half of our customers at the moment are actually vendors, either in the sanctions world or in the identity verification world. They are using our data to test internally and to get better at certain areas. So we had a customer on data biometric, for example, that asked us to generate head coverings for images for baseball caps or hijabs or because their algorithms were being challenged by identities that came with head coverings and so on, right? So we are helping them to be better at these things. But one thing that we did not envision was actually that a lot of the vendors were going to be very interested in continuously building their models. So that's one product. In that product, we have roughly somewhere between around 10 to 12 clients on that product. And they're all multi-billion-dollar customers. So, and those are customers that likely will never be able to disclose because, you don't want somebody to say, oh, you're vulnerable to these things, right?
Yep.
So, and then we have the PEP data product and PEP enrichment product that we launched the beta in the end of January, beginning of February of this year. And we have a fantastic pipeline there. And the way that we've gotten to market with this is by injecting ourselves into the middle layer. So basically, we will be selling our data, enriched data, to PEP screening providers. And we are very, very, very close to close multiple deals on this.
What is PEP? What is, are you saying?
So
PEP
is, so PEP is politically exposed people. It's basically every regulatory in the world. When you have as a client a PEP, you have to do what is called an enhanced due diligence on that individual because the reasoning for it is that PEPs can be subjected to bribery and fraud. So you have to keep it's not that you cannot do business with PEP. You can do business with PEP and so forth. You have to do an extra layer of diligence to them. Again, because, mayors, politicians, they can be subject to bribery. And then, in some countries, bribery is a bigger thing than in other countries. But it's a thing. It's a real thing. There is a higher risk for you as a financial organization when you deal with somebody that is exposed because they are subject to bribery. And that's right. The essence of it. Okay. So there is no list of PEPs that is issued by a government, like sanctions. Sanctions, there is a list that is issued. Instead, PEPs are basically, you have, as a provider, you have to put your own list together. And there are vendors that basically that's what they do. They put their list together and they do the thing. While we were testing a lot of this, we had to generate data that was about PEPs that would challenge the systems. And what we realized was that many of these databases are very poor, that they basically do a lot of false positives and so on. So what we did was create what we call an enriched data set. And that enriched data set allows you to do a lot of deduplication, a lot of risk analysis that the other data sets don't allow you to do. And we have been very successful in our POCs with this as I said before, we have, with all certainty, within the next 90 days, we're going to be closing major vendors on this thing. And we are super proud of that product because it really changes a little bit of how people thought about these data sets. And we are there to challenge one of the big names on providers on this. We didn't realize I didn't realize the potential success of that, and is becoming that. So we are super excited about that product. We know that we haven't closed big business yet, and that's okay. It's coming, and we are certain that it's coming. So that's the second product. The third product then is this proof of humanhood and uniqueness. And in my wildest dream, I wasn't expecting the response that we have gotten from the community about this. It has been fantastic. And so we are what I consider at alpha level quality at this moment. So in my mind, we're at alpha still. And we have 5 major projects that we're working on right now. And those, great thing of those, I can disclose their names as they become available, which is very exciting because I haven't been able to actually tell.
I know you're like dying to tell me who it is, but you can't. So yeah.
Exactly. Because there are really good names, and there are some names that are really good in the ecosystem, and because we're working with some names in the Bittensor ecosystem, but we're working with others that are outside the Bittensor ecosystem. There are good names. It's just, there are, as soon as I'm able to, I will be talking about them, and it's part of our contract, and it's great. And but it's absolutely encouraging that the message that we're talking about, people relate to it very quickly. It's not something that you have to, because a lot of these people have the pain of having bots skew their system, or the voting, or subvert the reward mechanism that they have. And so I think there is an acceptance, and that something meaningful and different has to be done to actually deal with this with these bots and agents that are just or simply bad actors that are just completely ruining the portfolio. So the first customer we go into is a protocol, it's a peer-to-peer protocol where people trade currencies. And these currencies are traded usually in countries where there is high level of inflation, right? So inflation is in the thousands %. So you have to retain the value of your currency. So people are selling stable coins or trading stable coins for local currencies, because that's a way to move the money much faster. And some of these countries may have restrictions, for example, in currency trading and so on. So there's a protocol that offers that service, and of course fraudsters have found a ways to get into that protocol and create false accounts, build reputation across them, and then once they have the reputation, they get traded, and then they do and run out with the money. So one of the key use cases for them is to make sure that that you cannot have multiple accounts, that you can transact across those accounts among yourself. And 2, that if you get caught, that you don't come back, that you can't come back. So effectively banning somebody from the ecosystem. So those are 2 great use cases for them. The third use case for them is that they want, in order for you to do a high level trading, they want you to prove that you are the owner of that. And that's where, remember that I was telling you about the wallet thing. That's one of the use cases there. And so we go in integration hopefully next week. And hopefully I'll be able to tell you all about it in a few weeks from now. Yep.
Well, that's super exciting. Yeah, I'm excited to find out who you're working with here. It sounds really cool. So yeah, Jose, I think you're onto something here, man. This all sounds really really good to my ears. So congratulations on the insight and the success. Is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't, that you feel like, God damn it, Mark Jeffrey asked this thing? Anything I missed?
No, I think we hit into many things and a story that, it's unfolding as we know, and it's so exciting to talk about. I mean, to be honest, I've been in the, first in the cybersecurity world, and then I've been in the financial crime prevention world in identity fraud for so many years. And, I think it's rare when you see something fundamentally shifting into how we think about security, how we think about identities. And I think we are in that moment. And I think I'm lucky enough that our team is so skilled in, we have scientists that have written patents about biometrics and about, the centralization of biometric and privacy preserving. We have people that have been building, blockchains with privacy in mind. And you know what I mean? That we were lucky enough that not only we were that we saw this opportunity, but also that we actually had the team members that had the level and the know-how and the knowledge to put a solution like this together in such a quick time. So we were super excited. We feel that this is, everything that we've been doing, everything that we've been building has gotten us to the point that where we are right now. And it's exciting.
That's pretty awesome. Hey, are you guys a Yuma company? I think you are. Is that correct?
We are. We started when we came into Bittensor, we already had our product out. We saw the opportunity with Bittensor, the two things that you talked about, which was the scaling of the data and the ability to do that distributed concept. So we work originally with Yuma to help us, put the subnet together and so on. And ever since we've been, building and collaborating with them in every step of the way, mostly on the big direction side, we get really well exposed to through Yuma to changes in the protocol and so on. And through their portfolio, we've been able to connect to other subnets in different ways. And I think that has been very, very useful to us.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I met a lot of the Yuma people for the very first time in Spain, where we were just there like a week and a half ago or whenever it was. I loved everyone I met. It was actually the staff over there is quite impressive. So even, I was impressed with them before, but after I got to know them in real life, I was more impressed. So
good people.
Yep. All right. Well, that's all the time we got, Jose. Thank you so much for taking a moment to fill us all in. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.